Hey guys, welcome. Good evening. Thanks for joining us here for our Overwatch Producer and Observer Foundations workshop. This is Mushu Beef, and I'm also joined by Pimp in the Crib and Ham Tornado. Ham, how you doing?
Doing good. Hey yo.
Thanks for joining us again. You're on our EU session, and now we're here for the NA friendly session, and also joined by Pimp. Like I said, Pimp, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here finally.
Yeah, finally communicating and spreading the good word of all the work that we've been doing. And no, you have been a huge part of that as well, of course, making all the programs and the packages so that people can get going. And so, yeah, finally going to put together this workshop. So excited to start it up. And let's go ahead and just get going right away. This is what we're going to be going over today. Again, the goal is to have it so that if you guys are wondering about how to get into observing and producing for Overwatch, especially in a remote setting, this is where you want to be, right? We are producing, we're showing you guys how to get involved and with specifically the broadcast that we do. And for the most part, anything else you do online will look a lot like what we're going to talk about today. That being said, we're going over the producing and observing definitions, the tools that you can use to observe specifically with Overwatch and some of the hardware that we have, of course. Then talking about a guide, some best practices around what you should be doing and how you should be thinking as you're approaching observing Overwatch. Then we're going to move on to the production side, right? So producing is a whole world, a giant world, but we're taking a tiny slice of it for specifically producing online and remote broadcasts. So that's what we're going to be going over today. And then, of course, the stream setup with everything that we have for the Scrim Nights specifically. But again, if you're doing anything remote, it'll look similar. And our final words of our suggestions for how to get started. So just a quick reminder and something that you should be remembering as you're moving forward and as you're jumping in. Remember, your goal is you want to enhance the broadcast by telling the story of the game, showcasing the mechanical skill of the players, and entertaining the audience at the end of the day. And you see these lovely esports fans just going wild over some esports. And
Man, where'd they get their hands on such huge Cheetos?
Right?
Oh,
That's like,
I'm getting hungry.
yeah, those must be expensive Cheetos. I wonder if they're
I
any
know,
good
right?
though. You think they're like consistently good?
Probably. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's some pretty high quality game swag. Yeah, I would go watch a LAN tournament if I could get a giant 4-foot Cheeto.
Yeah, I'd be worried about like staining my clothes, those, because it's like a fistful of cheese dust.
It's
Yeah,
full
well,
of cheese dust.
you
Sounds
know,
like a
that'll
terrible
be a
album.
good problem. That'll be a good problem to have. And
Yeah.
so yeah, between the Cheetos and between what is on the screen and what you hear, remember we're all one team as observers, producers, casters, hosts, analysts, everyone. We're just trying to tell a story and make for a really entertaining broadcast and telling everyone who's watching what is actually important. And so we're going to be talking about the eyes and the ears for everything that is not that is communicated through visuals and then the audio of the game itself. That being said, let's go ahead and pull in Ham. You want to walk us through really what is an observer and then what's a producer?
Right. So observers and producers, these are two very distinct roles, especially in a LAN setting. An observer is the person who's operating that in-game camera to determine what the audience sees on broadcast. So when, Effect gets that beautiful alley-oop fadeaway on the far in the sky, that's an observer controlling an actual person controlling that camera, giving you that viewpoint. A producer is someone who's responsible for the flow of the broadcast. So they're the ones who are switching the scenes. If you're streaming, they're cueing the talent. They design the run of the show. But so these two are just two distinct jobs in a LAN setting. But for our purposes, remote producing, oftentimes the producer is also going to be taking on the job of the observer. You get the scenes ready for the stream, you're working the overlays, and when it comes game time, you're also the one who's controlling the official camera.
Great. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Pim, to that? I think it's a good rundown.
No, I think that summarized the basis of this, and especially within a remote team. These are the two roles that are going to be pretty much one and one when you are going remote.
Yeah, there is something of actually no, I'll tell it I'll talk about it in the next slide.
Sure.
There's a couple of more differences between. Well, I'll just jump right into it. Why not? Unless you have something to add, Mushu?
Let's do it.
Okay, so yeah, there is a little bit of a difference also in the definition of an observer, depending on if you're in a LAN setting or doing remote casting. So if you're in remote casting, because you're the producer, the observer, you control all of this. So you are in control. You're the only one entirely in control of what the audience sees. In a LAN setting, though, you as an observer are part of a team of observers, like 2 first person, 2 free cam, maybe a flex, and your technical director. And together you're working all these cameras, switching between the feeds to tell the story. And something that you will have to keep in mind is the fact that casters are going to be watching your feed to build the storyline off of your camera angles. This is not going to be so in remote casting. The casters will be controlling their viewpoint themselves in game. So a little bit of a distinction.
Great. All right. Yeah, I guess we just move on then.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we're
All
on
right.
to observing tools. Go for it.
Yeah. So moving into observing tools. So how are you going to get these camera angles? If it was, on a movie set in real life, you would be like one of those giant like camera operators with a huge arm, like swinging over the, stadium and everything. But for us, we have 2 sets of mechanical tools. You have the keyboard and mouse and the controller. So they both serve a purpose in observing Overwatch. The keyboard mouse, the pros are if you're using this for free cam, it's very easy to pick up. We're all used to using keyboard and mouse, moving the mouse around, moving the reticle around using the mouse because we all play Overwatch. And the keyboard is definitely necessary for first person. You bind the first person hero camera angles to the keys and you can snap between them very quickly. A con of the keyboard and mouse is that it's very difficult to get smooth movements in free cam with your mouse. Even if you have like one of those giant, full desk mouse pads, eventually you're going to run out of mouse pad and you're going to have to pick up your mouse in order to set it back down and reset the reticle, and that's going to show up as a stutter on screen. So we generally use the keyboard for first person and controller for free cam. With the controller, you can produce much more smoother sweeping movements, and there's a lot more room and leeway to fine tune your movement in terms of how fast you're going, how slowly you want to pan. But the controller, of course, there are cons. It requires a lot of dedicated practice to get the muscle memory to move the joystick as finely as you might want, and of course, it's really difficult to use it for first person. Hard to swap between the heroes really quickly. So we generally say keyboard for first person, controller for free cam.
And showing right now, actually, the setup that I have, and we'll be going over more of this a little bit later. You'll just see it in action, actually. And so I have my Xbox One controller hooked up through USB to the computer, and the Stream Deck is there as well. So use both of those for when I'm doing observing. And I know that Pimp, it's the same for you, right?
Yeah, I do the same thing. Usually I'll never let go of that controller. I'll always have it in my right hand, and like my left hand, I do most of my switching, so I can easily, because I keep my hand. We'll go later, but it's so I can easily go right into free cam using that and my right hand, and then easily switch back to first person with my left hand.
Great. You'll have more of that later. Just a little sneak peek for you guys. We'll get back to the action now. All right, Ham. Let's continue.
Yep. So moving on now into the camera angles. So now so we kind of briefly covered the tools that you're going to be using to control the camera. So what different kinds of camera angles are there? There's 3. So the first one is free cam. You'll be controlling this with your controller. It doesn't have to be Xbox controller. Any kind is good. As long as you personally feel comfortable using it, because the free cam is that floating camera. It gives you that clean top-down view of the map. In Overwatch, in particular, where the positioning of the team and the various elements in the composition are really important, free cam is an excellent tool to use to make sure that you can give the audience a full map view of where all the players are situated. The second kind is first person camera. So this is the camera that you'll be controlling with your keyboard. This shows strictly the player's perspective. So as if you are the tracer watching through her eyes where all the rest of her teammates are and what the map looks like. This is going to be the camera angle that's used the vast majority of the time in any game, LAN and remote. And this offers the best view of the best way to showcase each player's individual skill, right? So if you're a Widowmaker and you're in first person, you're watching, Timo or like Flower or whoever line up those shots and get those sweet dinks, right? And it's particularly viscerally satisfying to use first person when you predict that somebody is going to be able to have a lot of skill in this hero, and you can see the aiming, see the tracking, the flicking skill that they're demonstrating. Third person is the last kind of camera angle, and this is the over-the-shoulder camera. So the character body, you can still see the character model, and you're following them around, but it's as if a camera is hovering over one of their shoulders. This is not used very often. I've only really started to see it be used in this season of OWL. It's in specific situations, for example, spectating a Doomfist vanilla play. Um, you might want to get a little bit more of that charging up action. You can see that. You can kind of see where he's aiming if you're in third person, whereas in first person, often his like very fast movements can seem kind of jarring. Another time you might see third person used is spectating a Genji's Dragon Blade. In first person, there's a lot of particle effects. He's so incredibly fast, dashing everywhere, and it can be difficult for the audience to see. So I know some observers prefer to use third person to spectate that ultimate. But in general, you can mostly concern yourself with using free camera and first person.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. If you're like observing and you're trying to get some feedback, make sure you're not confusing free camera with third person, because a lot of people, at least on like Reddit and like I've seen on like Twitter and even in Twitch chat, they say third person when they really mean free cam. So don't try not to get confused by that if you are getting confused, because while it is technically a third person view, third person literally means third person perspective. So like if you were playing a third person game, it's just like that. You're like over the shoulder.
Yeah, and it's like locked to their position.
Yeah, free cam is not following any individual player. If you see those great, gorgeous panning shots at the very beginning of maps where you're flying around, zooming around Gibraltar, or flying around Mondada's head on King's Row or something, that's usage of the free cam. So, yeah, that's a really good distinction, Pimp.
Great, yeah. So, because the communication, especially if you're looking to have a conversation about it, make sure you're using the right terms. It's a good call on that. All right. So, I guess for general mechanics, so this is a little plug for a video that we've done before. It's called How to Observe in Overwatch. Go ahead and check that out here. We'll link it in the notes, and for those in chat, just let us know. We'll put a link. If you Control F for How to Observe in Overwatch on Broadcast.gg, you'll be able to find it, or just send me a note if you want to get that link later. But this explains the settings that I use for observing in Overwatch. So the hotkeys, the controller settings, just some best practices around the mechanics of how you do the observing. And so we'll just leave that. You guys should definitely watch that. It's only 8 minutes and it has a lot of great information. But what we want to talk about here is kind of your mentality at approaching the observing. So take it away, Ham.
Yeah. Just another really quick plug for Mushu's video. It's absolutely crucial. Well, not crucial, but it's so incredibly good. It'll give you the perfect foundations for all your key bindings so that, before you even get into the mentality of, using your game sense to observe the game, you can make sure that all of your controllers, hotkeyed correctly. You can have all the buttons at your disposal, and that way you're not, getting bogged down by the technicalities of it when you're trying to observe. So great video by Mushu. Anyhow, once you get that out of the way, you start getting into the game. Now, most Overwatch games, they're not quite as linear as you might say, people who are used to spectating League of Legends or that kind of thing. Oftentimes, especially if you're on like Control Tower or Control Center on Lijiang or whatever, and the overtime is just stretching indeterminately and you're like, is this ever going to end? Yes, most team fights can actually be broken down into 3 phases. So there's the beginning of the game, the initiation, the team fight, and then the very end, the conclusion of the game, or the fight, excuse me. So at the very beginning, as an observer, you want to make sure that the camera is in a good spot before you switch to the game scene. This is specific to remote casting when you control, when your stream is going to go live, right? So make sure that the camera is in a good spot before going live, because when you get spawned into a game as a spectator, the camera is often actually placed in like some really strange corner, like on Route 66. It's facing like the darkest, deepest corner of like one of the random back rooms with like barrels and stuff in it. And I'm always really curious. I'm like, what? Like, why would you ever do that? So you have to like turn the camera all the way around, go out of the room, over the bridge, and it's, so just make sure that your camera is set up. You're aware of, what the audience is seeing because you control the feed. In general, once you spawn in there, you move out of that creepy room or wherever, use the free cam to pan to show, if you're comfortable, you can always pan to show the environment of the map. This is always really good practice time. And, it's just gorgeous, and you can practice, the fine movements, making sure that everything is really smooth, as we see Mushu doing here very beautifully. Show where the defensive team is setting up.
This
right?
is the worst
These are bots.
spot. Look at these. These guys are just like, let's take the upground. Nah, let's look at the spaceship.
This is a bot game, so our defenders are particularly enthusiastic in their setup. They're holding really aggressively up here, Mushu. What do you think about this positioning? Anyhow, so make sure that you show where the defenders are setting up so that the audience is oriented once the fight begins. But as the team comes out of spawn, follow the attackers. These are always just guidelines. You can always develop your own personal style of observing, but the general rule of thumb is to follow the attackers, whether in free cam coming out of spawn or in first person once the fight engages, just like that. Exactly. Snap to the Roadhog as the fight goes down, so you're making sure you catch all of the action. We want to generally try to follow the attackers because they're the ones who will be initiating the fight, right? And defenders are usually playing more reactively. And so in order to keep the gameplay as exciting and engaging as possible, we try to follow the attackers. As the fight develops here in the team fight, now we see the payload starting to get a little bit of distance. Oh no, Bastion! But as the fight develops, we want to stay mostly in first person. This is so that you can capture most of the action of the game, as we mentioned, and to showcase the skill of the individual players, and so there's not as much downtime in lingering on dead bodies and that kind of thing. Try to, throughout the team fight, also try to stay on one side, usually the attackers again, because hard swapping between attackers and defenders without, say, snapping to a free cam right away, like that, especially very quickly with no breaks, is extremely disorienting for the audience, especially in the case where both of the teams are running a mirror or a really similar composition. You're watching one tracer or one Roadhog, and then suddenly you snap to the defensive Roadhog, and the audience can get lost, and they're not sure if they're watching the defenders or attackers anymore. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, is to try and stay consistent. One of the great ways to use free cam, as Mushu is showing right here, is if you feel that the noise on screen is ever getting too overwhelming, the particle effects are obscuring everybody's viewpoint, or there are these big AoE ults coming out like the Transcendence. Mushu also was just able to catch that Graviton Surge. These are good times to use free cam when the scope of the fight or the scope of the ultimate is really important to telling that story. And this kind of ties into this last point, which is the most important thing to keep in mind as you are observing, is to anticipate how the flow of the fight may go. So we're all, we all play Overwatch, watch, pro esports and stuff, and so this is a good time to leverage your game knowledge, right? So we're keeping an eye on the ultimate charge of the various heroes, and using this information, like say we see here, McCree has a high noon, or Bastion has a tank ult, right? And that could be a game changer. This could absolutely win the fight for Seoul Dynasty if he can manage to get this out. So this will be something that I'm keeping in mind as I'm spectating the other players. And so you want to be sure that you can try and capture these big ults on camera. Not only is this entertaining, but it's a good way to form the story. And here we can see Mushu with his hands on the keyboard. The key bindings that I prefer to use are 1 through 6 for blue team and F1 through F6 for red team. but you can, Mushu uses F1 through F12. Regardless, again, this is all just guidelines, and as long as you are personally comfortable with your key bindings and you can swap to the heroes without, flopping around and accidentally going to a dead body or that kind of thing, that's all that matters. Because we're all just trying to tell the story as cleanly and as entertainingly as possible. So, now let me, we're not quite towards the end of the round yet, but I'll just cover some of these things to keep in mind as the map draws to its conclusion. So it's very important during the team fight, you're keeping an eye on the ultimates, right? Like these are the things that make or break the fight. And so you're watching for offensive ults. Blue Genji has a blade up, but red Zen has a trance, right? So to keep an eye on all of those and be sure to capture that when the action goes down on screen. But as we approach the end of the round here, your focus shifts slightly to watching the clock and the point capture percentage. So this starts to become way more important. Goodness gracious, I know I have whiffed so many when I'm I'm following some tracer, she's flanking around, I know she has a pulse bomb, I'm so excited to be able to catch her fatty 3k pulse bomb or something, and lo and behold, they've already finished the map and I wasn't anywhere near the fight. So becomes really important to keep an eye on the percentage and the meterage of the payload depending on what map type as the fight goes on, wears on, and we near the end of the game. You keep the focus on the objective. In general, you're usually spectating the body of the fight wherever it's happening during the streets phase and so on and so forth. But as we near here at the end of the point, beautiful capture right there by Mushu. Seoul Dynasty wins, or Seoul Dinst. That's right. Seoul Dinst. They're going to be taking, all 3 points of Gibraltar in a dominant fashion, right? But as the payload gets closer to the objective, you want to make sure that you keep the focus on the objective, because even if some tracer is somewhere around trying to be a hero for her team, if you lose sight of the map win conditions, then that can be really disappointing. I know that in one owl game a couple weeks ago, what was it, was it Dallas Fuel? One of them, Monty and Doa, I think it was on Numbani, but Monty and Doa were casting this game, and the Observer was following this really intense Soldier Genji, Soldier Tracer battle somewhere really far away, and they stayed on this fight for so long that something obviously happened on the point because the payload started moving, but Monty and Doa had no idea what had happened because the observers had kind of lost track of the objective. So be sure to keep that in mind towards the end of the game. And while all of these are mostly guidelines, this is kind of much more of a hard rule. If overtime is triggered, don't move off the point. The longer the overtime is ticking, the faster it can be gone in a millisecond. And it's all about telling the story, tying up the loose ends, at the end of the map. Did they push all 3 points? Did they, C9? Even if there are no players fighting on the objective, that's a story in and of itself, because that means that they could no longer stall, that they had no bodies, or that they, forgot to pay attention to where the payload was, or maybe there was a back cap or something like that. Visually as well, being able to capture that, the explosion off of the point, that boom, where all the gold lines come off of it and everything, and you get that really nice sound effect as well, is particularly viscerally pleasing. So yeah, those are kind of the rules of thumb for observing throughout the team fight. And I don't know if I missed anything or if there's anything else you wanted to add, Pimp.
Well, I'll add something because what I want to show you guys, actually, let's go ahead and go back to...
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't realize I was actually muted, but go ahead with yours. I mean, you can come back to me.
Yeah, sure. So let's go back here. I'm going to restart this lobby. And you guys can see how in the beginning of the game, when you're loading in, sometimes it just puts you in a weird spot. And as we load in...
This actually ties into one of my points I was going to bring up. So
okay. Yeah,
we might have the same idea.
Yeah, this is actually not... This is probably the best starting spot I've seen of a free cam. Because it's looking at something cool. But
yeah, it's not a corner.
Yeah, usually it's like this. It's in the corner looking at nothing. But yeah, that's why we talked about how ideally you'd want to get to a good spot first, and then you bring it in on the cam. And so you'd, maybe come out with a slow roll like this. And then you can catch the defensive team as they're getting into position. So that was my point.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say another thing would be because you can set, and this is in the Overwatch guide, that the video we already have made, but you can set hotkeys so that you can go to specific points on the map, and that's actually a good if you have those all set up, that's a good way to get out of that awkward area, and you can quickly like double tap like three. So every time, the way I separate my chunks into three, so like three I know is already on the defense, so when I double tap my 3 key, it's gonna go directly to that position that I have set up. And Musha's gonna demonstrate this now and see if he has it set up.
Yeah, I just set up 2 of them. So
Okay, so if you're in an awkward position right when you load, and you just press the key and if you double tap it, it should go instantly there, pretty much. And then you can like transition in, so that you're already in a good spot, and that way you're not wasting some time, getting there.
yeah, that's a good point. Having those preset will be really good. So you can even just set them once, and then it should remember for the rest of the times you're on this map and observing for it. So great.
Yeah, that's a really good point Pimp brought up, because, if for remote producing, you're going to be the only one who's having to, juggle all of these things, not just first person, using their keyboard and moving around the free cam, but also making sure, everything's fully set up, right? And so the viewing experience can be as smooth as possible. So kind of setting those static cameras can be really great.
Okay, awesome. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for on the observing side of it. So we'll be bringing it back so you guys can see some of the tools later on for how it interacts with the production side. But yeah, thanks again, Ham, for leading that portion of it. Some great thoughts, and I think some really good things for people to keep in mind when they're starting out with observing Overwatch.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be muting myself, but I'll still be around. So if you guys have any questions, we'll be answering questions at the end of the workshop. So just pop them into chat, and then I'll be happy to answer them.
No problem. And actually, maybe a good time now. I did see a question from Real Dealker. What he said, or he or she said, would over-the-shoulder view be good for switching between tracers? So I think this is one that's more subjective, right? For how exactly you want to do the swaps. I think the goal is that you want to make it clear. I don't know if you guys have a strong opinion about that question.
So I think believe swapping between tracers. So I'm guessing like between the two sides of the tracers. So watching a tracer in third person can be good. It's again a little bit more up to your personal preference, but I would once more warn against just hard swapping from red tracer to blue tracer without any kind of break or very quickly, because that's disorienting for the audience. In a LAN setting, oftentimes when you have more observers and like free cam people who are dedicated to free cam, this is going to be difficult to do if you're just a single observer. But something to keep in mind is if you choose to switch between like the red tracer who's attacking, and you want to go to blue tracer because she has a pulse bomb, to transition through free cam. So you're on red tracer, you're following the red team, they all die or something, or you just decide to swap to blue side. Swap to free cam, rotate the camera slightly so that you can see where blue team is set up, and then snap to blue tracer. That way the audience knows that, oh, hey, I can be sure that we're spectating 2 different tracers, and this one is the one that's on the defensive side.
Yeah, that's also a good point to do that free cam swap, the transition before you switch teams. Also, like if the pace of a fight is changing to the other team, that's the perfect way to transition, is go to free cam, angle yourself so you're positioning, for the team that you want to switch to, and then switch to them. But going back to the original question, that's something I actually do with tracers sometimes, is go to that third person perspective, but mainly so because you get that third person perspective and you want to see sometimes tracers being a little sneaky, maybe crouching a little bit. That's kind of a time when I'll use it, because like you'll see, she's being sneaky. You'll get a little bit of the environment. You'll be able to maybe look around the corner and spot who the tracer's trying to go for. And then once I see the tracer actually make that jump, I'll go right back into first person.
Yeah, these small little things are more up to your discretion, but Pimp definitely has a great point to watch. Sneaky, dun-dun.
Yeah, I think there's actually one more question that probably pertains to this part of the thing. Someone asked about, well, the same person actually asked about setting up those hotkeys for the positions, and those will save. You only have to do it once per map. So once you have it set, it'll be saved there, and I believe it's saved if you go to another computer as well, it'll be saved. So you won't have to deal with, like, you say you had another account, you're doing a live event, and they have like multiple observers set up, like I'm pretty sure it's locked to the account and saves on Blizzard server. So you shouldn't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and here actually, Zikaran had a question that also kind of sort of pertains to this, but I'll just touch on it, and I'm sure you guys also have a lot to add. But what do you do if we don't have much game knowledge? As I think going back to when I said, use your game knowledge to know how the fight swings. That is actually not a very insurmountable difficulty. Just watch more Overwatch. Woo!
Yeah.
Oh no.
Exactly.
So I mean, you definitely pick up experience playing the game. This I believe that somebody earlier also had a question like, oh, can a low MMR player be a good observer?
Yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah, for
Yeah,
casting. Yeah.
or for casting. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, your mechanical skill has very little to do with, how well you can read the game. Game knowledge, though, is more experienced based. But just watch, pro esports, watch pro Overwatch. That's basically all the studying that you really need to do. See how, like they switch smoothly. Keep an eye out for how they, capture those big AOE ults like snapping to the free cam for the Diva ult, or, oh, did I notice that they were using, third person for the Doomfist this time, and I actually like that. So, I'm going to remember that and use it for next time. But in general, it's just you gain knowledge through watching other people do it, I guess. Kind of like an apprenticeship, I suppose. Yeah.
And if you really want to get to like the core of that question, if you don't have like, say you came to Overwatch with zero knowledge, free cam is not a bad idea to do more than first person, because you don't want to be jumping around trying to figure out who to watch. At least free cam, you can see the majority of the fight. But other than that, at least learn who the DPS players are, so you can see who's going to be getting the majority of the kills.
Oh, that is actually a really good point, Pimp. Like if you're brand spanking new, and welcome. But yeah, so for the purposes of remote casting, especially because you're just the one person, using free cam can be a lot easier than trying to manage all the different first person viewpoints of the various heroes. Oh, am I spending too much time on this Zarya? Should I swap over to this soldier? Oh no, I missed that tac visor. If you get used to just getting smooth free cam movement following the fight as it moves through the map, then you're already doing a lot. Especially for the purposes of Broadcast.gg Scrim Nights, if anybody's interested in coming and producing for us, free cam is perfect.
All right, I think that's enough for these questions on observing. There was one more question there. I think we can hold that to the end between the game modes and stuff. That's really simple one. I think we can hold on, just so we can get the ball rolling a little bit more on the production side, since we've talked so much about the core part, which is the observing, but production has also got its fair share of importance.
No, absolutely, and there's so many fine details. I'm totally production dumb. So take it away, Pimp.
All right.
All right. Yeah, we're on to production. Go for it. I just want to let you know that we're looking at the right place in this beautiful control center from Blizzard Arena. My goodness, look at that board. It's like 20,000.
I don't think you're sharing with us anymore.
Yeah, because the stream.
Oh, that part. Oh, yeah,
stream,
there you go. It's a delay.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Then my stream health is dipping a little bit, so we're gonna kill the other feedback loop.
All good. Should you want to introduce production?
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
go into the...
So for the scope of it, what we want to talk about is, again, there's so much to do with production. There's so many ways. There's so much detail, and we can't cover everything, obviously, and nor should we, because our bread and butter is the remote team casting with small teams. So typically 2 casters, 1 producer is what we work with. We've also experimented with having analysts on as well, so up to 5 people. So you can add as many people as you want. Again, with the routing, we'll talk through that as well. But the point is that we want to talk about how would you get going with a smaller production, 2 people on casting and 1 person producing. So with the computer specs, I can't really recommend anything specifically, because I think there are a lot of computers out right now that can handle spectating and streaming as well. What the first thing to do, we'll talk about at the end as well. Just get going with our recommended settings. Try to stream and produce a VOD. See if your internet and your computer can handle it. Like right now, my internet's struggling. I don't know why. Then that's going to help determine whether you can actually produce or not based on your equipment. All right, cool. That being said, again, if you post the VOD to the Looking for Feedback channel that we have on our Discord, then we can get you some feedback on specific things. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on. Yeah, Pimp, we got this nice chart here, and this is a lot to do with what you had set up when I first joined you with Overwatch University League. This is how we're running it. Do you want to walk through the workflow?
Yeah, so I'll work off starting, looking at that producer plus observer smiley face we got there. Since that you are the producer now and the observer, as we talked about, in a remote team, usually generally producer and observer are the same person. And you want to make sure, you have, I'll just go from the middle to the right first, at least to set yourself up for streaming. You want to have your streaming platform or program. We are going to go talk about OBS, but some people prefer XSplit, Game Show, vMix, or even, if you have money, you can get some of the other high value production software. But we're going to be talking about OBS, and mainly we're going to be, well, not mainly, actually, we're going to be talking about streaming to Twitch, which is what your viewers are going to see. So that's, at least you can get your producing and observing practice that way. And then when you're ready to bring on some people to get involved, you bring your casters, which we use Discord for our audio. So that way, we can communicate well. You can use other voice services, but Discord is our primarily used one. And then for video as well, if say you want to display your casters, in a side screen, doing analysts or, introduction stuff, you can use Skype or Discord for video. Those are the best two platforms that we've used or I've had experience with. And then, so once you get everyone together, you're going to want to get into, your Discord channels, get together with the team in a custom lobby, where you're going to be, and when you're in game, you're going to be having the game audio and video going to, you're producing. So it's going to be going through your stream, but you're also going to have so there'll be two audio sources, your mic and the desktop audio through OBS. At least OBS only has like so many audio tracks you can have. It doesn't separate it by per program. So you can mute yourself to the stream, and that way you can talk to your casters. Why we have those dotted lines there for audio to casters via Discord, muted to stream. Mute yourself so that way you can communicate with your casters. Maybe you need to tell them what you're looking at. Since, you're remote, they can't see what you're looking at. You can at least tell them, hey, I'm looking at, there's a sneaking tracer. You let them know that, there might be a pulse bomb about to happen. Or say you got a replay of an awesome Genji blade that happened. A Dragon Blade, I should probably use proper terms. Let them know, a Dragon Blade last fight. And that way they have like a replay to go back to. But that way the stream doesn't hear you giving those audio cues. And it's like an actual production setting where like they'll have a microphone in their ear, so that way people can talk to them while they're casting, So that's a little bit on.
That's an important point too, because in a real production setting, if you're a producer, you'll be talking to the talent while they're talking. So it's important for the casters, and one of the things we want to work on more is to get accustomed to that happening. Someone talking to you and you reacting to that and working it into your conversation flow and your workflow naturally.
Yeah, some people might stutter when they hear, someone talking, but it's something, practice makes perfect, and same with, as a producer, you making sure you're giving those proper cues. You're not just, you say there's two tracers that just pulse bomb. Well, which one, got the play? You want to, give some details there, make sure you're precise with that. So it's also practice for the producer as well. But right. I think we can move on next to setting up OBS. Like we said, it's our preferred streaming program. And there's a few things with it. I guess so we can kind of start a go around. OBS is, the open source program, we use for video and audio. There's a lot of multiple types of settings you can have in there. We can kind of go through that a little bit later. But right now, OBS, and it's called OBS Studio is what we use, but like the default version was OBS, and we'll talk a little bit more why there's a difference between OBS and OBS Studio. But when we refer to OBS from now on, we're going to be referring to OBS Studio. So right here, you see this is the basic view. It's a live view right now. You have your scenes in the bottom left, but these can be moved around to however you want to configure them. And your scenes are going to be, what you're going to be switching to. So every time you want to transition to something new for your viewers to see, you're going to be using the scenes. And the sources are what are compiled inside those scenes. So if you need to add, overlays, as we see here, we have that the scoreboard on the top. We have Overwatch the in-game as its own thing, and like all the little names and score text, those are each their own source that are part of that scene. The mixture there, as I talked about earlier, the audio, where you have your own audio that's mic and then has desktop audio, and you can see right there they're both muted. They both have their own volume control that you can change. And then your scene transitions here, we have default set up at like 3 milliseconds, but you can change that to certain ways, or maybe add a stinger transition, which is a little bit more advanced. But then you have the stream status, which will let you know your CPU percentage, your bit rate, if you have a healthy stream and whatnot. So that's a rundown to OBS. But now let's go into what we mean by like studio mode, which is really big, because unless you want to add something, actually.
No, I think that's a good place to go. If people, again, we're going to be publishing this information, and the reason why we have so many words on there, and it might have been difficult to read on stream, is because we want to eventually publish this so you guys can just follow up if you have the information anyways. So don't take notes, just watch and listen and enjoy.
Yeah, so studio mode now, there's actually a button that says studio mode. You'll see it has the preview on the left and live on the right. This is crucial, especially if you do not have a tool that you've probably seen on Mushi's screen, which is Stream Deck. But the preview, is so you can it's self-explanatory. You can preview your slide before you push it to the live. So say maybe there is some small change you have to make real quick before you push it live. If you were in the normal view, not studio mode, it would automatically transition when you clicked that scene. But here, you can view it, and edit stuff before you push it live. Anything?
Yeah, that's crucial, because just like Pim said, you get to see it beforehand. So actually, I'm gonna go ahead and show that on stream real quick, just so you guys can see what it looks like. So I'm gonna turn on studio mode, and now I'm working off of the actual broadcast I'm doing, so that's why it's repeating itself. But I can look all these different scenes that I have set up, and it won't push to live. What's on the right is exactly your view on the stream. And as soon as I push to live, say if I push this transition button, we're actually sitting in a lobby right now. This is one of our Scrim Nights going on, and it's Team Lux versus Team Powerhouse. We'll see if you have an opportunity to go back to that later on. But for now, we will go back to slide deck. So you can see just how exactly that works in studio mode. Really cool, especially if you don't have a stream deck. Cool. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and move on now. So importing the scene collection, this all made possible thanks to Pimp in the Crib. We have the zip file and the messages of the Scrim Nights team, Scrim Nights important info, and you can go ahead and continue on. How do people install this?
Yeah, so part of the reason I did this was because when you have multiple producers and you need to schedule through them, it's easier to just give them like a simple plug and play package, so that they don't have to deal with font sizes. They don't have to deal with making sure that things are centered as if you type something that's long and type something that's short, they're both going to be centered around the same point, and it's not going to be where you have to slide something over because now it's shifted over some other text. It's all a simple plug and play. That's the joy of it. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to download the zip folder, and then what you want to do is you're going to want to extract it. So you're going to right click that zip once you download it and do extract, and you're going to get that folder out of it. It's going to be just say broadcast, okay? And now what you want to do is you want to drag that folder into the root of your drive. So if you see here, Mushu's got the SSD storage. That's just the name of his the named his disk drive, but you'll notice it has a D icon there. It's the D drive then. And we have all these little JSON files, okay? And these are the actual scene collections. Now you're going to want to find the scene collection that I have made. So when you export a folder, it's going to do what's default for all your files. It's going to be saved in there. So if you have like another letter that you use for your drives, you're going to have to manually edit that with like any kind of text editor. But to make it easier, I did the most common 4 drives that people are going to use. And then to import that, you're literally just going to go click scene collection. As you see in those red dotted box, there's going to be an option for import. And then you're going to navigate to this folder and find the correct JSON file that is associated with your disk drive you want to install to.
Great. I think that's
anything.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And I think from now on, these settings are pretty much just you can do some brief explanations about what it is about, because I want to show you guys exactly how we work the scoreboard more so. And this is just general OBS stuff. So stream settings. This is the Twitch stream key. It's just corresponding to the Twitch channel that you have. So it's when you go to your dashboard and add /stream key, it'll show you that key. And then you just copy paste it right into the settings, and don't share this with anyone or make it public. Otherwise, people can just broadcast to your channel. Cool. And then output settings. Yeah, Pimp, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but this is just like we're going to post this deck, host it so you guys can see it. Maybe the more important one is the video bitrate and replay buffer.
Yeah, so video bitrate, it depends on your connection. 5,000 is probably the recommended. 3,500 is like the minimum if you're going to do 720, 60 FPS. That's like the minimum. Encoder, it depends on your, on your software. Maybe you can make stuff. You have a beefy CPU, you can put that encoder preset to very fast. But what's really important here to work with our broadcast package, you're going to want to set that recording path to that broadcast folder, and there's also a video folder within that broadcast folder. As you see there, we have it set there, and that way you'll be able to easily save. It's mainly for the replay why we set that there, and then the replay buffer. I've been dealing with 15 seconds now. I used to use 20 seconds. Depends on what you're more comfortable with. If you're fast at those replays, you're gonna want to maybe have that. You maybe can do 10 seconds. If it's a short replay, but you're stuck with it during the stream. So 15 seconds, I found is a good medium there. I think that's really it. MP4, that's the file format we have the replay set up in the package. So if you wanted to change it to a different video type, make sure you're changing that on your own. But for now, if you want to just go plug and play, just set it to MP4.
Exactly. And you guys will see why it's if you play around with this, then we'll show you also where to change it. You have to change it in the scene where the replay is, because you need to tell it the exact file name that it has. So you need to get it down to the extension. So just leave it in MP4 for now. I don't think it's killed us at all. I don't know if I've had any corrupted videos, so it's been generally fine.
Yep. So moving forward, audio settings. We talked about before, there's not many audio tracks that you can have. Really, it's only two. I think in a recent update they added support for more audio tracks in a way. I haven't dealt with that as much. I don't know if you had, Mushu, but for now, this is what we've been doing is just the 2 tracks, your microphone and your desktop audio.
That's right.
So with that, if you wanted to add music to your stream, my best recommendation is to have a separate video, because every video will add a different audio track that you have on that scene.
Yeah, and that way you can control having it on a different audio track, like Pimp has been saying. It's important because then you can take that slider or you can just click on that speaker icon. You can mute it, so you could have your mic and desktop audio muted, have your songs playing, your music playing, and then be discussing with your production team beforehand. So that's something that I wanted to get set up, but yeah, we didn't get time to throw together everything on that track. So will that be for the future? So then you can see the green bars. If during the broadcast itself, you see the green bars, that just means that you're getting audio output from that. So if I show the screen again, you can see the green bar moving corresponding to my speaking. And then if Pimp talks, you'll see desktop audio.
I'm talking right now and you'll see that it's moving.
Yeah, perfect. Alrighty, that is audio settings. And video, this is one's really simple. For what we do and generally for the bit rate that people can stream at, like a 5K, if you can do even 3,500 kilobits per second or 5K, then you can run 720p at 60 frames a second and have it look pretty solid. Then we just say downscaling filter is bilinear, so that way it's not bogging down your CPU too much. It's something where to experiment if you want, but you want to optimize for 720p at 60 frames per second. Then you can start to play around with OBS from there.
And I want to touch also there on that base canvas resolution. Having that at 1920 by 1080 is crucial for our package to import properly, because all our positions and coordinations on like the X and Y coordinations for all our different, each source is based off of a 1920 by 1080. So if you have your canvas resolution at 1280 by 720, it's going to make everything out of proportion and it's going to look like it's zoomed in a bunch. So that's crucial to making sure that it's, for our package, that it's at 1080.
Great. All right, cool. So moving on, we have OBS hotkeys. And I just recommended we do hotkeys for replay buffer, switch to scene for each scene, muting microphone, muting desktop audio. You guys can see on this right side where those would go. You can see it's actually really long. It shows you each of the sources within each scene that you can toggle separately, which is kind of cool. But then you'd have to give it a hotkey for each one. So I say like Alt-1 or Alt-2, depending on the scene that's associated with. Before Stream Deck, did you have any other hotkeys you did?
So I actually was able to play around with the replay buffer before I got my Stream Deck, but the Stream Deck made it a lot easier. But I did have, so like my keyboard has 5 macro buttons on the far left side. I did have those that I would be able to easily swap between certain things, such as doing the audio that we have, muting microphone, muting desktop audio. I had those set up, and as well, like started playing around with replay buffer. But with Stream Deck, or if you have any other expensive production button table, or what's the proper term for it called, production deck.
Yeah, I forget.
I forgot the actual name for it. I actually looked at them not too long ago. But if you have macros on your keyboard, those can work. As long as are able to recognize what they are. But however, unlike Stream Deck, your keys are going to look the same all the time. But now we go to Stream Deck, you'll see that it's a 15 button hotkey device, and you can customize it to millions of ways. Millions, probably under a million, but I mean, you multiply all of it, it'll be close enough.
You can have infinite pictures, so there you go.
So that's a good thing. So like you see here, Mushu has quite a few different picture slides. Like the B and the R. We'll get into that a little bit. Those are gonna be team 1 and our blue team and red team is how I when I made the picture. We have what looks like a scoreboard. That's like we can see the score of the of the series. There's different scenes that we have set up there, or like macros that we can do. You see, like there's the microphone that's going to control his audio to the stream so that he can mute himself. And then be able to talk to his casters, as we talked about earlier. So this really helps out. And I know there was a question in chat about the Stream Deck, how much important it is. And I say, to me, I think it's a lifesaver. I don't know, I can't stress how many times I used to forget to transition into game without having a Stream Deck. Because I'm like doing so much stuff as a producer and observer that I would forget. But it gives you a visual cue on which scene is active with the Stream Deck. So, anything you want to add about the Stream Deck before we move on to some of the advanced settings?
It's awesome. It is expensive though. It's $150 US. So it's not anything for when you're getting started. Just make sure at least your computer can handle it. Or if you're down to drop the cash, then get your Stream Deck first. And then when you find out your computer can't handle observing, just upgrade your computer. Simple as that. But yeah, definitely something to make sure that you're good to go and that it's something you want to do before you go and make that purchase. But it is so great when you're coming from trying to figure out alternatives to having hotkeys. It's hard to remember things. Like when you're on the fly and you have 90% of your brain power trying to go towards casting or producing or observing, you don't want to think about and trying to remember in that split-second moment which button is the scene that I want. Having it where you can have the text and the pictures really makes it simple.
Yeah, and while this is, like Mushu said, a little bit expensive, it is, compared to what's out there, it's one of the cheaper solutions. And especially since you can change the picture to anything you want. It's not like paper slits where you have to you push the paper in. It's digital. So that's one of the great things about it.
Excellent. So moving on, then we have the advanced settings. So again, just plug and play. Just put these in your settings, and then you're good to go. But that process priority high, and that's something to play with too. You want to make sure that your stream is if you're diagnosing certain things, that's something to change around if you're having some issues. But file formatting here, you should name that replay. This is very important because then the replayed file will be named correctly for the OBS package to pull it in to that scene. Again, we're going to show that replay function a little bit later.
Yeah, that's a crucial part. As you talk about, file name extensions they need to be exact as to what's in that JSON file. So this way, we do replay is simple enough. In that way, if you ever need to go change it, you can change it here, but remember you got to go also change it in your scene collection as well. Stream delay. In most tournaments, you're going to want to have a stream delay. We use 120 seconds is pretty standard. Some people use 3 minutes, but that's usually enough so that you prevent stream sniping.
Exactly. And so it's going to be a broadcast dependent, as Pimp said. So just one other note here as we're moving on before we get to I want to show the replay stuff as well. But before we get to that, just one thing, as we're improving on the package, sometimes when it unpacks, or depending on your computer, what dimensions you have, you may have to do some fine tuning of these scenes themselves. So to do this, you want to right click on that screen, that preview screen, and unclick or uncheck lock preview. That'll allow you to drag around the corners to scale it, or if you hold Alt and drag, it'll start actually cropping. So I can actually show that if I go into studio mode here. I'm going to show you guys the scene. I'm going to do this on the preview so that it doesn't affect one that I'm looking at. So if I go to the in-game, we actually have a live game going on right now, so it's nice and interesting. We go right to the bottom. When you're interacting with this, I can click on Overwatch because I know that's I'm going to unclick here. Lock preview.
I think first. A good scene actually would be the camera scene, because as we saw before, I don't think it was adjusted. Your webcam was actually adjusted to the proper dimensions, so you actually might be able to exactly practice on that.
Let's
one.
See here. So you mean the deck with the webcam, or the
trio cam scene?
Oh well, that's because. Oh, okay. I guess we can show that.
You can do that. That's an example of a source that you can crop.
All right, cool. So as you guys can see here, it looks really weird, but normally we have 3 slots where you pulled the video from Skype or Discord video. And so right now you can see my camera with you can see my hands here. That looks kind of weird. But anyways, we're going to go and find the layer that corresponds to, and that should be webcam. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it so it is within that name box, right? Maybe I can even scale it more. And then it's too wide right now, right? So actually I'm going to hold Alt and then drag this edge. So now if you see the edge, the edge turns to green, that means that there's stuff that is cropped out. So that's good. Yeah, I'm all lined up now. So now I'm apparently Pimp in the Crib now. I'm the Pimp in the Crib now. Look at me. And then I have the video in here as well. So you do that for each of those other sources for the webcams to make sure that you're all formatted correctly.
That's and just
go down here.
Just so people know, like, this is currently set up to use Skype video.
Yeah.
But you might have to change those 2 webcam sources right when you unload it, because it might have my username for Skype in there. It's trying to find that exe file that doesn't exist. So that's probably the only items I think you're going to have to do this unlock preview or uncheck lock preview.
Right.
On this scene is I think the main one that you'll have to do it to.
Sometimes my in-game also doesn't format correctly because I actually run in windowed mode. So,
okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
that could do too. Because I use full screen windowed, so it might be different for every mode. So that's a good thing to point out.
Yeah, but it's doable. So again, if you guys have any questions about that, just come onto the Discord and ask us about any formatting stuff. Send us a screenshot. We can help out. It'll be pretty quick, and you'll be able to whip around the program once you get started. Cool. So Scoreboard tool, take it away.
So I wrote this tool because I saw a lot of things that was going on during contenders and like World Cup, where there was low. So there's been scoreboard tools around where it's just simple team names and the score, and you can update it, swap teams. But I wanted to go a little bit more advanced. Production quality is something that I strive on whenever I do my observing, especially as a remote team. I want to make it to look good. I wanted to make it be like almost the best remote team possible, since we can't be all together with a million or at least even one extra person to produce with would be plentiful. But this way, You can update so much info about the team as well as the match in general. You can see there's maps and the score of each map, as well as attack and defend, a little bit more info of the teams and of the players themselves. This is also included in that broadcast package though that we have here at Broadcast.gg. Everything's going to be found in that scoreboard folder. There'll be an exe called OW Scoreboard Tool. And when you launch set every time, there's just a little bit of a kink with it that you'll have to reset, check current, and update. I like to do that reset on every match, and even the general channel as well. That way, if you don't, it's going to add an extra line, and it's going to make your text look small. So if your text ever looks small after playing around with our package, it's because you did not reset and update the tool.
So the little trick here that I've found as well, actually, as a workaround. Sometimes when I have that and I've entered all the information, I'll just go into the box that has the issue, Control A to select all, and then hit delete, and it tends to fix it. I've had in his situation.
Yeah, no, I've done that too.
Yeah.
Alternately, what I'll do is I'll go into the front of the text and hit backspace a bunch, or go into the end of the text and hit delete a bunch. I don't know, it's one of the two, but it adds an extra line every time. So just because it's trying to load in the previous data in case you accidentally close out the tool. So that's just a little kink there. But resetting and update it should fix it every time. But I think we can move on and just show a little bit of what the tool does. Some of the big features with it that we can see when setting up this tool. You see that we have the hero information there. I don't have icons there, that says this is a hero category or this is the role category, but you see that we have the player name, and you can see there's those drop downs. So you see agility is going to be on that Genji as player 1 for team 1, and you'll see that he's on that DPS role. So that drop down, we have DPS, tank, support, flex. As you can see, the flex player we have, and Zumba on that flex player is this is Zarya. But, this is a good visual cue as the differences between both teams. So you see, Soul Dynasty, they got their Widowmaker and Tracer. They're kind of running a death ball. While on the other side, we have a little bit more of a dive on the side of LA Valiant. So you get to see those differences in team compositions, as well as what the players' preference are. So we only have one hero here, but we do see it's a lovely portrait there, courtesies of Blizzard's art team.
And it looks really great when you can show and adjust it on the fly. And that's what is really the power of the Scoreboard tool is. Because even if we go into the live scenes right now, so I'm going to push it to live so you guys can see. Let's say we were... Try this out. Oh, it is showing. Okay, my bad. I was in studio mode, so I was looking at the left. Okay, so we're already here. So like Team Lux, I just changed the name of it because we're watching Team Lux right now, and I can do that in the middle of a broadcast and not have to go and right click on the text file in OBS and then have to spectate it there. So it's really nice to be able to change it on the fly and then you can transition. Well, for the red side, or for Team 2, is Powerhouse. Of course, it was Soul Dynasty before. So being able to do that is really great. And I think now will be a good time as well. I can show you guys the Scoreboard tool on the map progress. Let's say right now Team Lux is down in this best of 5. Then going to this scene where I have the current score shows just like the map progress, the map score. And one of the cool things is that I'm going to go actually back to the slide deck so you guys can see the Scoreboard tool. I'm just going to cover up the last one so it doesn't get too confusing. One of the great things is another button here called swap. So if I click that, it'll swap the team names, SR, the score, and then the map and the map score, but not the players themselves. So just keep that in mind. But anyways, if I go ahead and hit swap now, actually before I hit swap, I'm going to go to the map score and then hit swap. You guys should see the text flip. Did it flip? Oh, I didn't hit update. Okay, hold on. There we go. So now it's swapped everything, and you see the map scores have swapped as well. And so this is really great if the team, if you're doing the breakdown of the last game, and they're swapped sides, which actually they have just actually swapped sides in the actual game itself right now. If I were to show you guys the lobby, you guys can see that. See right now, we just swapped it, and this is exactly why it's useful, is that in the middle of the game, it's not too bad to swap during the breakdown of the last game, because now I don't have to worry about switching the team names going into this game, right? We can go right in and know that the team names are on the right side.
Yeah, one of the things too is that another thing we didn't mention, there's also the attack, defense, and neutral toggle buttons, right? They're radio buttons, I'd say. So, but those are all, if you're wondering what those are all referenced based on Team 1's perspective. So if Team 1's on attack, you press A. Team 1's on defense, you press D. It used to have it be separate where you had to choose on both sides, but this just makes it simpler so that it knows, which team's on attack, which team's on defend. But yeah, so being able to swap though is handy, so you're not messing up which team names. And as you saw, we had the map progression. So as we had in the order of open division, so you have control, escort, assault, hybrid, control, and that way we have these icons that show all the control maps. So if they're still picking their control map, these are the options. Although open division is tailored to only a specific map pool, at least we have it where it shows all the control maps, so you know that it's control. It's not just like a blank image that kind of we used to have. But updates are frequently happening to this tool. So you hop in our Discord, you're going to see when I push live updates to this tool, so you can download the latest one. The current one I'm working on now is going to have a feature that is going to deal with a replay playlist, and you'll be able to reset the replays through there as well. As well as I'm going to add a thing to make sure that it loads all the replays properly, so you have it in that playlist. But frequent updates are coming here. Also, there's going to be an update for Blizzard World when that comes out, so you'll see that added to the map section once I get the artwork for that.
Yeah, man, that's going to be really good, and I'm excited for that as well. So also, what I want to show you guys, actually, before we move on, I wanted to point out the replay portion. So what I've done is I'm now in game. This is an actual Scrim Night like I talked about, so it's being casted right now on our main channel, Broadcast.gg, and I have the setting on OBS called replay buffer, and it's already going, right? So let's actually go ahead and watch, let's watch Frosted here on the Widowmaker, expecting to hit some headshots eventually. I'll bring in the audio so you guys can hear too. But the point is that this is constantly recording, and it's dumping like the data after it's 15 seconds ago. So if at any point when I hit the button, and I'll show you guys the in-game with my camera here, on my Stream Deck or on a hotkey, I have this button called Save Replay. So hopefully can hit the headshot here. Come on, Frosted, I believe. Yeah, after like a big moment, you're gonna want to hit that Save Replay button, and then you can go into a different scene where that replay will be shown. So yeah, let's see here. All right, so Frosted just went down. Maybe you want to show how much that. So I'm going to save the replay right now, and then I'm watching the rest of the team fight, and then maybe we can bring in the scene saying that, Frosted was trying to look for the shot, but unfortunately was getting completely wiped out from this other team. You saw the Winston jumping in, and then finally the rest of Powerhouse was able to focus her down, and then you'd go right back to the end game, right before that loops. And so that's kind of the point and how it works for the replay. It's really great and kind of magical to think about, and for the production quality, it just boosts that quality to be just a lot better than what you'd expect from a remote team cast.
Yeah, and you know that Overwatch is so fast, so like to make sure that the audience isn't missing out on any action that could possibly be happening during that replay. Sometimes during, even though the fight's over, there might be, a Tracer trying to sneak or something, just get a quick pick while he's waiting for his team to spawn. We have that little corner box in the corner that shows the current in-game, so that way you're not missing any of action that could possibly be happening.
Exactly. Cool. Alrighty, well, that's the replay function there, so really fun to play with once you guys get it set up and going correctly. So
yeah, and that's what we talked about before. When you're muted to the stream, you can communicate with your casters that you have a replay going on. This is what we were referring to. So there's a lot of things. I think I would, as a beginning producer, I would take in a little bit of stages. Trying to get comfortable with at least functioning the stream and observing it at the same time, and then maybe go into some of the more advanced features of that scoreboard tool. And then as you get the hang of it, you'll be able to increase your progression as to using which feature at what time.
Excellent. Well, I think that pretty much does it for us. Actually, so we're checking out this Dragon Blade here. So go ahead and check that out. And we'll get that on a replay. Actually, it's pretty solid. They do wipe out here. See blue team on their defending side. They'll be able to hold onto it for now. Ultra Shock trying to get away. I'm going to save the replay now. And then we can go back and relive that moment of his Dragon Blade. He jumps right in, gets the mercy kill, but it wasn't enough. The rest of the team was already falling. So Powerhouse not able to hold on to that defense. Yeah. Okay, cool. We're back. All right, now the question is, how do you get started? So first, get you guys on the Discord. There's a Discord link at broadcast.gg at the top of that page, and you'll be able to join, or just search discord.me/broadcast.gg. We have that broadcast package that Pim set up in the text channel. Scrim Nights important info. We have instructions there and instructions from this deck. Again, we're going to be publishing this pretty soon. And then just go and... I need a mod here again. Hold on. Okay, cool. Yeah, Ham, you can post that again now. So then... sorry about that. So practice observing an arcade game or just a bot game, right? Get used to the controls, get used to the hotkeys, switch it around, change the score, and capture all of that in your VOD. And then you can submit that to us and looking for feedback.
Just a reminder too, there is that observing video too, if you're getting started with observing. We talked about it in the beginning of the slides, but you can also go to our YouTube channel as well, and you can find that video there if you want to, try to get a base understanding of how to observe in Overwatch, as well as some of the hotkeys that we have set up on our controller and the keyboard as well.
And we have that link set up in the Scrim Nights important info as well, if you guys are trying to remember where that is, or just Control F on the Broadcast.gg site. We're going to do a rework of the site because it's really janky and doesn't look good at all. But first things first, wanted to make sure that people have the information they need to join and get started. And the last suggestion is, of course, watch the pros, watch Overwatch League if you're not already, and keep practicing. And that's really ultimately what it comes down to. You want to be comfortable, and the more hours you put on, the more comfortable you'll be. And just getting used to switching it around and using the tools will make it so that your production, it's just like an extension of your body as opposed to you having to think about, what do I want to do? Which button do I have to press? Cool. Yeah, Pimp, I don't know if you have anything else, and we'll also take questions from the chat,
yeah,
Twitch chat.
I think we can take it to questions now, unless Ham has anything to say, or...
No, you guys perfectly covered all of those points. And yeah, just to iterate again, it always feels like a lot of information, very difficult skill threshold at the very beginning, but it's all just about practice and experience. And you already have the most important part of becoming an observer or a producer, which is love of Overwatch. So never forget that.
Well, great. I don't think there's any better way we can end than that, unless we have some questions here. But again, if you guys, while we're killing time for that, just join the Discord. You can ask us any questions if you forget about it. We'll be posting this VOD and hosting it on YouTube as well, so you guys it can live forever and you can reference it when you're ready to come and join us. And yeah, the point is, again, for all of this, you guys see where Overwatch League is heading, trying to do city-based teams, and that means it's going to be city-based observers. And even if they're flying out like an observing team to cover 2 locations, that means that they're going to have to multiply their team by at least 6 times. So yeah, we'll have to see how it goes once that happens. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that at least you can do the online tournaments and wherever Overwatch goes. And a lot of the skills will transfer over if you're observing other esports titles as well, and having the experience of online and working with an online team, making it work in this setting will transfer for whatever experience you end up doing in the future. So that being said, that's it for us, guys. Thanks so much for joining for the Overwatch Producer and Observer Foundation's workshop. This has been Mushu Beef, Ham Tornado, and Pimp in the Crib. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Later.